Welcome back. It's time to create our very first linked list data structure. And let's say I wanted to create a linked list that has 10, pointing to 5, pointing to 16. A nice little simple one. First off, how would we go about visualizing this in a language like JavaScript that doesn't have linked lists? Well, we can simply say that we have a new linked list. Let's just use let here, my linked list. And this is going to equal to an object that has a head property. Remember, because the very first item in a linked list is the head. And we're going to have a node. The point of the node is to say, hey, anything can be in this node. Just put anything you want. And it's a container around this data. So think of node as a bucket of data. And in this case, we can just use an object to put our data in. All this node needs to have in a linked list is a value property of what the value of the node is, plus a next property, which is the pointer to the next node. Now, this value can be anything we want. And the next property has to be a pointer or a reference to the next node, in which case will be an object. So it will be another object that we're going to reference in memory. This way, the value of the node can always change, but the pointers are always going to be pointing to that. So we can change items and nothing else will change. It will still point to that changed and updated value. Let me show you what I mean. We have the head here, in which case it's 10. So we want to set 10 as our value. And this head is going to point to the next node, which will have a value of 5. Make sure I add the commas in here. And the next value of what do you think? Well, the next node in the list, which is value of 16. And next, referencing what? Well, 16 is the tail of our linked list. So that means it has to point to null, or what we call null terminated. That means it's the end of the list. Perfect. So this is what we want to create, a linked list. Using this as our structure, we're going to create a class called class linked list. And this class, and we should be familiar with the syntax by now, will have a constructor, which is the function that gets run at the very beginning when we create the linked list. That's going to take a value. What does that mean? Well, when we finally say that we're creating a my linked list, remember, we want to create this. When I create my linked list, I'm going to instantiate the class, that is, run the class function here, run the constructor, and create the linked list. I'm going to say linked list, and then give it a value to start off the list, because, well, the list can't be empty. It has to have something. It has to start with the head. So in our case, we want to start it with 10. And ideally, by running this command, we've created the first part of our linked list, just the 10. Let me comment this out since we won't need it for now. Now within this constructor, we have, well, the this.head reference because, well, we need to keep track of the head. And this head is going to simply have a value that equals to the value that we passed in, that is the 10 here. And then finally, the next. And what should the next be when we first create this list? Well, since 10 is the only thing that we'll have, or one node, next is going to equal null to begin with. Remember, constructor is all about creating the very first linked list node. What happens when we instantiate a class to start off my linked list? And then finally, we have two other pieces of information that we need to track. One is this.tail. And remember, the word this just refers to the linked list. So it's just referring to the linked list that we create. What is the tail going to be? Well, because we only have one item, the head is also the tail. So we simply say this.head. And by the way, I know this can get a little bit confusing. And as we go through this video series on linked lists, it is a bit hard to wrap your mind around. So I really recommend that you code along here and do the exercises, because just watching me talk about linked lists is not going to solidify your information. It is hard to really visualize things. So you may need to build linked lists a couple of times to really get the hang of it. But this will become second nature once you get used to the syntax and also the idea of having this head and tail and referencing them. Anyway, the final piece of the puzzle is, if we want, we can keep track of the length of the linked list. This is optional, but I think it's good to keep track. And because we have one item, when we create this linked list, because we give it a value, we'll give it a length of 1. There we go. If I run this, I get an error because, well, I have this code that's not really JavaScript. So let's comment that out and click run again. I get undefined, well, because we haven't logged anything. But if I console.log my linked list and I run this, look at that. I have a linked list with a head that is value of 10. Next is null because, well, there's only one node. And a tail, which is the exact same thing, pointing to null, and a length of 1. Congratulations, we just built our very first linked list. However, it's time for a little bit of an exercise. Our list is not complete, right? We need to create this linked list. So we need to be able to add 5 and then 16. So my challenge to you is this. We want to create an append method. And this append method is going to take a value. And in here, we want to write a piece of code that allows us to say const or my linked list dot append and give it a value, if we look at our list, of 5 to append to our current list. So I want to be able to say append 5 and then append 16 to create our completed list of 10, 5, and 16. How would you go about doing that? And I'm going to leave this for you to try out. Remember, this may be a little bit hard, and I'll provide the solution video and we'll code along. But I do encourage you to challenge yourself and just think about what's happening and what we've done in the constructor to create this append method. Good luck, and I'll see you in the solution video. Bye-bye.